Hey guys, this is a patch 15.18 patch notes with nerfs to Annie, Aurora, Azir, Galio, Kiana, Silas, Talia, Volibear, Yunara, buffs to Amumu, Ashe, Cassiopeia, Garen, Hui, Jace, Vel'Koz. They're adjusting Briar, Alawi, and Zac, and they're making system changes to Balmy Cinder, Merkskim, and Sunfire Cape. So let's take a look at what they've done this time. Last time we had a bit of an interesting patch with a lot of champions introduced into the jungle that I've still yet to see. So I don't know what that patch was about, but I'll try to be nicer this time. We'll see what they're doing here. This could be interesting. Bots, boosters, and bans. So maybe we'll get some clarification here. League is a game that is at its best and highest quality when both teams have a fair shot at winning. And we want to make that a reality when you load into each game. But that doesn't happen when there are people who are purposefully making games worse by griefing, inting, smurfing, or verbally abusing others, just to name a few. As we mentioned back in August, this sort of behavior is not and has never been welcome in League, and we're going to be cracking down on it. A few days ago, we started rolling out bans for purchased and botted accounts, and starting this patch, we'll be rolling out bans and other punishments for accounts that our systems flag as having been used for boosting and hitchhiking, common forms of smurfing. It won't be all at once, though. We'll roll out these penalties over time so that we can ensure that our player support organization can address any appeals in a timely manner. While we're very confident in the accuracy of our detection systems, if you believe you were wrongly banned, please reach out to our player support team here. So unfortunately, this is really just a reiteration of what they talked about in the dev blog, but it doesn't provide any additional clarity. And it's pretty straightforward. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But the problem is that for a player like me, especially, who is the type of player who obviously has different accounts and things like that, I'm really fortunate actually that when I bought my first account, for $5 or whatever, boom, it got banned for being a botted account a long time ago, many years ago. And because of that experience and not wanting to waste money on a botted account that's just going to get banned anyways, not even just the money, but the time that I had spent to get that account up, all for it to just get banned anyways, made me realize that I'd rather just hand level all of my Smurf accounts from that point on. So I'm very fortunate that I have a decent number of hand leveled accounts so that I can play, I have an account for each role and things like that. And the difficulty here is that there seemed to be a line being drawn here between hitchhiking and boosting. And what I assume they mean when they say hitchhiking is duo boosting. And I guess my question and the clarity needs to come in the form of, what exactly is duo boosting? Is duo boosting where somebody's paying for a duo boosting service to play with someone? Is it duo boosting if I'm playing a secondary role, with a friend on a lower rank account? Is it duo boosting if, where's the line there? Because let's say I'm playing 80 carry and my 80 carry account is legitimately in Platinum or Emerald. Maybe it would be higher if I put more time into it this season or more games into it. If I wasn't playing 20, 30 games this season on the account, but I was actually putting time into it all at once, maybe it would be higher ranked than that. So is that account underranked and unfairly smurfing? Is it unfair for me to play with a friend on that account, even though I am lower rank on that account? How many games, would I have to put in before it's considered okay, you're at that level on that account and it is okay for you to do that? They seem to say that, that playing a different role wasn't as big of a deal. I think we all know that from a moral perspective, if we thought about how it should be done, that duoing with somebody who's significantly below your rank on an account that's significantly below your rank, especially on your main role, is the most problematic form of hitchhiking. But there's not really clarity as to how big that gap is. Is a gold player, getting on a different account, although I think that maybe they can duo, but let's say like a platinum player getting on an account to duo with the silver player, or a gold player getting on an account to duo with the bronze player. Is that a big enough rank difference that those players would be getting banned? Is, playing a few games here and there with someone who's your friend, like, not a big deal because it's only a couple of games? So, for example, I have a friend who plays AD carry, and he's in, like, I think Emerald, I want to say. And, so I've played support with him a couple of times, not very much, but a couple of games here and there this season. Does that mean our accounts both get banned? I don't know. So there needs to be a clarification on what the rules are, because up until this point, smurfing has been considered, well, technically against the Summoner's Code. It's been against the Summoner's Code for a long time. Riot has basically endorsed smurfing and, said that it's okay, never banned anyone for smurfing as long as you did it yourself or you weren't being boosted. And it's kind of unclear to me. There's a blurred line here between, are we banning boosted accounts and boosters who are like getting paid to manipulate people's ranks? Or are we just banning like anyone who plays with a friend a certain amount, or if you're playing your main role at too low of a rank, you could get banned? Or if you're, like playing even an alternate role, but you haven't played enough games on it, so you're like at an artificially low rank and you're playing with a friend. I don't know where the line is. So I don't know what's going on with that. And that's really confusing and concerning, because now I'm thinking, like, I thought my accounts were safe because, I hand leveled them all. And most of them, the vast majority of them, are for playing another role. But maybe if I'm playing another role but duoing with a friend or something like that that's at that lower rank, that's not okay, maybe. Maybe if I'm, like duoing with a friend, even if it's only for a few games on my main role on another account, maybe even just a couple of games a year is not okay. So I just don't know where the line is, there. And that's making this whole thing really confusing. And you look at a player like Pentalus, obviously, in the drama that happened with him. And as I've said before, I think Pentalus was kind of an idiot the way that he went about giving them all of his account information and like making such a big deal out of it publicly on Twitter that he was stomping people 40-0 and on a new account, and and flaming the low elo junglers he was playing against on his main role, main champion, one-tricking Nunu. But, so I think he went about it a really stupid way. But, like, and people have had different takes about this, but my opinion on the Pentalus thing is I don't think that he deserved to be banned across all of his accounts for what happened. So I don't know. I think that Riot obviously just picked him to make an example of because Drew Levin or whatever saw his tweet. And I think that the way that Riot operates in kind of target banning certain people instead of like making a clear set of rules and broadly applying them it's really confusing, because I don't know, what I'm allowed to do and not allowed to do. And, until I know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do, I'm just going to stick to playing on my main account. How about that? But yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, on the other hand, though, because obviously most people, especially lower ranks, really don't like smurfing, I, have always had the take that I think that if they can figure out how to consistently get rid of smurfing, or mitigate it, I think that they should do that. And, so I'm all for that. I just think that they need to recognize some practical reasons why people smurf and then change the system to reflect that. So, for example, the reasons why I smurf mostly are primarily to learn other roles. And I think everyone kind of agrees from a moral standpoint that learning other roles is an okay reason to smurf, because you're not going to be the same rank on your role, especially if you're a support player. You're not going to be the same rank on other roles. And so you got to start somewhere, and it's less morally bad to start on a new account for a new role than to grief your games in your main account in Masters Plus or whatever on a role that you're terrible at. So you only have two options, right? If I'm going to go learn top lane as a support player, or I feel like playing some Jax, right? Or I feel like playing some Kaisa 80 carry. What am I going to do? I can't play that on my main account without griefing the games on my main account. And if I go play on a fresh Smurf account, I'm kind of griefing the games there because I'm a little bit better than, a fresh account or a silver account or whatever. So what do? Well, you have an account for that other role, and, after a short period of time, it won't be silver anymore. It'll be, it'll be emerald or diamond or whatever, and then you play there. So I guess that's my thing, is if you ban smurfing, which I would be in favor of banning smurfing if you make some practical changes to the way that the game works, like allow people to have different ranks for different roles so that you can just play all 5 roles on your main account but at different ranks, so that you're not skewing the matchmaking that way. That would basically limit the need to one account. And then I also think, especially for one tricks, it's kind of essential to have a second account to practice other champions in your main role at, because in the exact same way that you might be, a Master Plus support player, but then a Emerald or Diamond AD carry, you're going to need a, if you're really one tricking a champion like your Dantes and your Hecarim one trick more or less, and you want to go play Kindred or something like that, he should not necessarily be doing that on his main, especially if he's kind of towards his peak LP, because he's going to be griefing the games. Whereas like if he gets to go onto a Smurf account and play those games in like Diamond or Low Masters or something like that, all of the sudden, like, he's at an appropriate rank for his Kindred, and now he can learn his champion at an appropriate rank without griefing new players' games, without griefing high-rated players' games. So there needs to be an understanding that one of the reasons why people are choosing to smurf is to not grief high elo games. And there needs to be a balance between not griefing high elo games and not griefing low elo games. And really the balance there is you can have another account if you're, learning another champion that you're significantly worse at, or if you're playing a role that you're significantly worse at. And the rank system just needs to get those people into the appropriate MMR quickly, which is better for everyone, because that means that your ability to climb is more accurate. You can climb faster. And all of these things, regardless of whether you're smurfing or trying to learn a new champion or not. So obviously the rank system should just be able to move people up to their appropriate rank faster, which they're working on with True Skill and stuff like that. And I think they've gotten better and better at doing this anyways. Not that True Skill is implemented in ranked yet, as far as we know. But anyways, so there are reasons like that I think are reasonable. It's like people have to choose between griefing one elo and griefing another, and there needs to be a clarification on, if Riot's going to just start randomly banning people, there needs to be a clarification on what decision you're supposed to make as a high elo player when you're learning a new role or a new champion. Because right now I'm just like, especially if I play with a friend on another account, I guess we're both just getting banned. So I guess I can never play with friends again, which really sucks. So I don't know what to do with that. And especially on that point of, okay, well, I'm learning a new champion or I'm learning a new role that I'm not as good at. So I am legitimately like an emerald or a diamond level this player. My friend is also an emerald or a diamond level this player. So can I just play with that person then, as long as I'm not playing my main champion or my main role? It seems like there's nothing wrong with that to me. Now, I agree that like going to Iron to duo with my wife or something like that, although we both main support, so I would actually be off-rolled, but like, me playing AD carry even in Iron is not fair. Although, we have to say, my wife, she's peeking out of her mind right now. She's actually no longer an Iron player, no longer a Bronze player. She's all the way up to Silver 1, and she's going to hit Gold soon. So big news there. maybe if she actually gets good at the game, maybe we can duo together again. Maybe she'll get up to plat with support, and then I can duo with her with my terrible plat 80 carry skills. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I'm worried about even doing that, right? So there needs to be clarification on, do we want to grief low elo games? Do we want to grief high elo games? I think it's better to grief the low elo games, and the reason why is no bias against low elo players. It's because if you're griefing in high elo, you're going to grief for as many games as possible. It could be 100 games before you fall too far down if you're only winning 45, 46% of your games, whatever. If you're, role swapping or playing a champion you're not comfortable with, but you're still kind of holding your own, you're going to very slowly grief a lot of games. Whereas if you start on a fresh account and choose the grief low elo option, you're actually only griefing them for like 5 or 10 games, and then you're starting to get to an appropriate rank anyways. You're not playing in that MMR anymore. So for that reason, just from a trolley problem utilitarian standpoint of who's griefing more games, I think if you choose high elo, you're griefing more games than if you choose to start a new account. So they need to clarify, just to reiterate, I know I'm repeating myself over and over again, but I'm thinking about this. Specifically, what Riot needs to clarify is playing on a Smurf account to learn a new role okay or not okay? Is it bannable or not bannable at this point? They can say it's not bannable now and then change their mind later and say, okay, now we're making this bannable, but they need to make a clear statement on that. Number two, is learning a new champion that you're significantly worse at on a new account okay or not okay, especially for like one tricks. How is a one trick supposed to build their champion pool up? They're just supposed to grief all their games on their main account, or they can grief and overperform a little bit in like 10 low elo games or whatever, and then they're in like Emerald, Diamond, MMR or whatever, and they're chilling, and then they're at an appropriate rank to like learn and practice a new champion. Is that okay or not okay? Is duoing with a friend on an off roll considered hitchhiking and like duo boosting, or not? And if it is considered duo boosting or hitchhiking, why, and at what rank difference? So if I'm playing 80 carry and I'm Emerald and my friend is Emerald, like, why is that hitchhiking? Because I'm not like significantly better at that role than them. So is there a certain rank separation? Is there a certain number of games to confirm that you're actually that rank that needs to be played on the account? Even just a general idea of about when that's appropriate or not, it would be really good. Is there a certain number of games that's okay? Like if you occasionally play, like if you go and play 1 or 2 games with somebody, you're not going to get banned. But if you go, and play like 10, 20, 30 games with them, then, that's not okay. Same thing, but instead of for playing an alternate role, if you're playing an alternate champion in your main role where you're not as good, same thing. Like you're clearly, your skill level is totally appropriate for the rank that you're playing at. Are you allowed to duo with that person if you're higher rank on a different role or champion on your main? So a lot of these questions need to be clarified and answered. Still have no idea what's going on. Oh well. Game info tracking improvements. We kept an eye on your feedback about jungle timers and updated death recap, and we're making some adjustments. Death recap has received visual polish. Death recap can now be moved anywhere on the screen or redocked to the corner. Re-added damage type pie chart that shows the proportion of physical, magic, and true damage that you took. Hover for a full damage type breakdown. That's nice. That's one of the most useful things that you could see in your death recap is like, you want to know what abilities were used on you that were important. They've done a really great job of doing that, including the summoner spells in there right now. And the other thing that you want to know is for itemization purposes, like what percentage of, physical, magic, and true damage I'm taking. If it shows you a nice pie chart instead of the little bar, and it shows you for overall instead of breaking it down by each champion where you don't really know what the total situation is looking like, that would be really nice, and that sounds like what they're doing. Shortly after 15-17 launch, we hotfixed jungle timers, providing full information about a camp's respawn time immediately on gaining vision of it. Now you gain timer information 10 seconds before respawn for basic camps, or 60 seconds for buff camps, which is consistent with how it worked before. That's kind of interesting. Let me think about that for a second. So like if you see the enemy raptor camp and it's taken, I thought that, yeah, you would instantly gain the respawn timer. But now they're saying they're not going to give you the respawn timer. They're only going to give you the respawn timer 10 seconds before it respawns. But buffs, they're going to give you a full 60 seconds to know what's going on, so you can play around it a little bit more. I guess maybe they're thinking junglers are getting invaded too hard because of it, was one of the concerns, that like laners were going to be able to pay extra attention to junglers and like really ruin their day, or like invade with their own jungler and really mess people up. And maybe that's the case. So they're only giving you 10 seconds to plan around it. And maybe your jungler's not in the location anymore or something like that. But then that borderlines on like, at least for seeing respawn information for enemy camps, if it's only telling you 10 seconds before it comes up now, it's like borderline. They just removed that information almost entirely. So that's kind of interesting. I would like to know what a jungle main's opinion is on that, because maybe good junglers are going to see this as, okay, I can go back to playing around that because I knew, about when they took that camp. And so now I know the respawn timer in my head, even though we don't, a noob jungler who doesn't know that would only see it 10 seconds before. I know about when it's going to spawn, so I can get there and make a play that a less skilled jungler wouldn't. Maybe junglers are going to appreciate the skill in that. I don't know. Okay, there's going to be a Your Shop thing for skins. Champions Amumu, Q cooldown and mana cost decreased. Q cooldown 16 to 14 seconds to 16 to 12 seconds. That's pretty big. Mana cost 45 to 65 to 50 at all ranks. Mumu has been very sad in support for a while. Would like to give him some power back. Interesting. It's obviously helpful to both Amumu jungle and Amumu support, though. A nice little change, nothing gigantic there. Annie W damage decreased, R magic pen decreased. Annie's been on fire in pro play for quite some time. Okay, and she's OP in regular play. W first max tech. Okay. Base damage on her W, 70 to 250 to 70 to 230. And R summon Tibbers, magic penetration 15 to 20%, down to 10 to 20%. This makes me a little bit sad because Annie support is one of my favorite kind of slightly off meta picks. And because it's doing so well in mid lane, I feel like Annie support is completely unplayable. And they're nerfing this like base damage and the magic penetration that you get kind of base out of the old no AP ratios or anything here that would specifically affect mid lane. So that really sucks for Annie support. But yeah, I agree. Annie has been quite dominant in pro play, unfortunately. Like Annie is just the type of champion you don't really expect to see in pro play at all. So if it's like having a good presence, something is a little bit off. Ashe AD growth increased. Okay, from 2.95 to 3.45. Nice little buff. Not going to do that much, though. Aurora passive damage adjusted. Base percent max health damage, 2.5% to 1%. Percent max health damage AP ratio, 2% per 100 AP to 2.7% per 100 AP. Let me read this again. So the base max health damage is going way down. And you need an extra 1.5% in order to make up for that, which you get at about 200 AP. And you know what? That's fine because Aurora has been kind of strong. I wouldn't really call this an adjustment, right? Just because there's one positive change and one negative change. I think this is very clearly a nerf. So obviously, you're going to deal a lot less damage with Aurora passive until you get 200 AP, which is, it's not a ton of AP, but it's not nothing. Azir attack speed growth decreased, W damage decreased. Yeah, Azir is another one that's been quite dominant in pro play. 5.5% to 5% on his attack speed growth, and his W rise AP ratio 45 to 65% AP, 40 to 60% AP. So he's losing 5% AP ratio off of his W at all ranks, and his attack speed growth is going down by 0.5%. Yeah, nothing major there. They're going pretty light. I was wondering about whether this is like this must not be the world's patch because it's not a very significant change. But they're starting to get there. So I think Riot's going a little bit cautious right now on the patches. Even last patch, which was a little bit wild, was mostly kind of irrelevant changes. I guess I would say like they're going. I mean, not to say that these are necessarily bad changes. These are good changes, but they're kind of light, I would say, when it comes to Aurora and Azir. It seems to me like they're being cautious. Briar Q damage decreased, now deals physical damage. W bug fix, R alert sound now plays after a delay. Range increased, damage increased. Okay, let's see what happened here. Base damage on Briar Q went from 60 to 180 to 60 to 160. Okay, not a huge deal. And the damage type is being changed from magic to physical. I think this is kind of a big deal that it's being changed from magical to physical, actually almost bigger than this, because champions tend to carry a lot less magic resist. And, as a champion that is mostly a physical damage champion anyways, people are going to want to be itemizing armor against her, and preventing her from doing some mixed damage is going to be, definitely a hit to the champion as well, maybe even as big as the base damage change here. So she's getting kind of double tagged in that respect. Fixed a bug where Briar would sometimes stop moving and lose her attack command when Frenzy expired. Uh-oh. R certain death. Global sound plays on cast, now plays after cast. That sounds like it could be a big deal as well. I don't know how much of a delay this is, but obviously one of the reasons why Briar ult is super easy to dodge is because of the global sound effect. And so if it plays later, that's obviously going to impair people's ability to dodge the ult. I don't know how much later this is going to be. It just says it plays after the cast. Yeah, and that's going to mess with people's timing a little bit too. So that could actually be an interesting change to help her hit more ults. Damage 150 to 350. But if it's like right after she casts it and, it's far away, it's probably going to be hard to dodge. Hard to hit anyways. Because if it comes right after she casts it instead of like, right when she starts casting it, it's not going to make a huge difference. Damage 150 to 350, 150 to 350, 50% bonus AD. The 50% bonus AD ratio has been completely removed. And the AP ratio is going from 120% AP to 130% AP. The range on her ult is being increased. And this is actually by a decent chunk, by 2,000 units. It's pretty big. So, a lot of 80 carries have about, 600, 700 range. So 2,000 units is like roughly 380 carry attack ranges. It's like almost a screen. So that's kind of a decent range buff. This 50% bonus AD ratio being removed is a massive amount of damage, I would think, being removed, though, unless Briar's going to just start building AP now completely. And, I don't know a ton about Briar itemization, but I don't think the 10% AP ratio makes up for it. So this seems like pretty significant nerf to Briar, because they double hit her Q. And, I would say that this is borderline. 50% bonus AD ratio. This is like a neutral change to her ult, I would say. This technically helps a little bit with hitting it. This helps a little bit with hitting it, but losing 50% bonus AD ratio is pretty rough. And honestly, how often are you actually going to hit somebody that's an extra 2,000 units away at max range with Briar ult? I don't know. Hopefully you're not, hopefully you're not relying on that extra 2,000 range too much anyways. You should be getting in range of your target, and it's easier to hit if they're closer to you. So you should be not trying to necessarily do it across the whole map. You should be doing it, from as close as possible without them seeing you. So I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised. Did they say why they're doing this? Why they're nerfing her so much? Briar's ultimate is a little too hard to hit, especially against aware players. To compensate, we're nerfing her damage a bit, as she's quite strong right now and doesn't have room for a straight buff. Took this chance to move Q back to physical damage for all you lethality enjoyers out there. Oh, maybe they think... Okay, interesting. So they think that the Q change to physical damage is going to help... I don't know that people go lethality Briar. I mean, I'm sure there are some people, right? They've said it here, but I don't think that that's the main build or the best build. So I guess they're saying that, like, because it's physical, lethality armor pen would apply on her Q and that would help. I don't know about that. I don't know. I think this will be... I mean, it's not a huge change. I think that... So we'll move on. But I think this is going to be more of a slight nerf than Riot anticipates. Base mana on Cassio from 400 to 450. And her E Twin Fang base damage versus poison targets going from 20 to 100 to 20 to 112. Yeah, that seems totally fine. So very minor change. Definitely haven't seen a ton of Cassiopeia recently, so that makes a lot of sense. Galio passive and Q damage decreased. Yeah, he is really strong right now. His passive AP ratio is going down by 5% from 45 to 40%, and his Q Winds of War percent max health damage per tick is going from 2.5% to 2%. Not a massive change, but definitely a little bit helpful. Garen E damage increased. Garen is hitting a historical low breath, the amount of unique players. We'd like our signature accessible top laner to be more enticing for players. We're going to buff him up by showing some love to his AD ratio. Didn't they just nerf him a couple of patches ago, like quite significantly, and that's why this is happening? Okay, whatever. 36 to 40% AD, 38% to 50% AD. So this is just a 2% AD ratio, but it's per spin. I'd like to see what the total is then. I don't know how many times Garen spins, to be honest with you, but so that could be obviously a little bit bigger since this is per spin. You know, that 2%, if it adds up 5 times, 10 times or something like that, could be, you know, quite a decent buff. So that seems okay. I think that's appropriate. Passive and E abilities damage increased. WQ movement speed increased for Hui. Oh, that's why this was so confusing. I was like, E's abilities. Okay, all the abilities using E. Something like that. So passive signature of the Visionary, AP ratio 30% to 35%, so 5% AP ratio boost to his passive. Base bonus movement speed on his WQ, 20 to 30% to 30% to 40%, and the bonus movement speed AP ratio is going from 2% to 3%. That's pretty significant. That's a lot of extra movement speed. So that's going to make that ability come out a lot more often, maybe. I kind of like that one for team play, speeding everyone up. You know, but we'll see. I mean, his other abilities, he does so much damage from so far away that you're not very often casting this ability unless you're trying to get away. E subject torment. So these are all of his E abilities are all getting a 5% AP ratio buff. Let me see what this says, because to me, Hui is strong, and he's been strong for a while. Hui has been producing fine art, but we've seen some player feedback saying that he struggles to find footing, partially due to his strength waning over game time, which we agree with. To fix this, we're buffing his AP ratios to give him more impact as he gets gold, and giving him some higher mastery skewed buffs that will help his WQ feel smoother to use. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's like the biggest buffs in the world, so it's not a huge deal. It's just 5% AP on his passive, 5% on his E abilities. A little bit of extra movement speed on his WQ, which he doesn't use all that often, but they're right. Definitely better, higher skilled players use that in coordination with their team more. But what I definitely worry about is that, like, I don't know that Hui needed buffs. Not every champion needs to, be dominant at every stage of the game. So then we've got Jace, Q damage increased 60 to 310 to 80 to 310. So just a little bit of Q damage early, totally fine. Not very, that's a tiny change. Alawi, passive quality of life change, W damage decreased, E vessel duration decreased. Passive no longer spawns tentacles during summon or teleport. Her passive now waits until she's done teleporting. That's helpful so it doesn't waste tentacle spawns. W, harsh lesson, target max health damage 4% per 100 total AD to 3.5% per 100 total AD. Okay, so a little bit of a nerf there to her W. It's interesting. And E, test of spirit, vessel duration 3 to 4 seconds. Okay, so I guess that they're shifting power around here. So you got the quality of life change to the passive. Her E is going to be a lot stronger because of the fact that she's going to, have that E like shadow clone thing to battle against of the person out for an extra second. It means she's going to get to deal extra damage to that, and deal more damage when she manages to hit her tentacle onto somebody. I think that's also her E, right? Okay, not a top laner, by the way. So obviously that's going to be a big deal to have that extra second. And I think they're just taking some damage away, not a ton, but they're taking 0.5% per 100 total AD max health damage away from her W to kind of compensate for that change. So I think it's probably power neutral to maybe a tiny bit negative, but I think that for people who are hitting a lot of E's on Alawi, this is going to be quite a nice buff here. This is going to be really powerful. I'm a little bit surprised though that Alawi, in my opinion, is a champion that's very skewed towards performing better in low elo and worse in high elo. And that can be okay for champions to exist like that, obviously, but I am a little bit surprised, though, that they would do something to buff her E and take power out of the rest of her kit, because that's going to be a lower elo skewed change, where Alawi is going to become more dominant amongst low elo games, where she's hitting a lot of E's because people aren't super good at playing around the ability and dodging. And so Alawi is going to become more dominant at the ranks where she's already the most dominant, and because they're shifting power out of things like her W, she's going to become less powerful at the ranks where she's struggling the most. So rip Tyler one on his Alawi. He's not playing League right now anyways. I don't know where he's off to. We got children. We're getting old. It is what it is. But he's gone. Me too. Base AD, armor growth decreased. Passive damage decreased for Kiana. Kiana... Did I not say this, by the way? Why are they buffing Kiana? It's going to be super broken. And then it was 100% way too much super broken. Okay, this one was really obvious to me that they did not need to be buffing Kiana. She was performing extremely well. Now they're walking it back. There's not much else to be said about this one. This was a pretty obviously dumb buff. The last time they did this. Her recent buffs were quite potent, bringing her into the spotlight as arguably the strongest champion in the game, driving up her ban rate significantly. Oh man, my friend who plays AD carry was complaining about this so much. He was banning Kiana like every game. Okay, whatever, take her down a peg. So base AD back down to 64 from 66. Armor growth down 0.2. That's not very big, from 4.7 to 4.5. Passive royal privilege, bonus damage, 30% bonus AD to 25% bonus AD. Seems decent. We'll see. I think that actually one of the worst parts about this whole Kiana situation is that she was rarely picked before by Kiana mains, but very strong in the hands of people who mained her. Riot thought that she was only strong in the hands of people who are, a very small niche of players who are maining her, so they could give her some buffs to get her to a broader audience or something like that. And it might actually bring down her win rate or something a little bit as more people flock to the champion and played it. Turns out maybe she's not all that hard. Maybe the champion's a little bit busted, and it just increased her win rate while also increasing her play rate and her ban rate all at the same time when she was already well above 50%. She was already sitting at 52+% when they buffed her. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I'd have to compare it with the buffs to make sure that they're walking everything back properly, but I'm not going to do that right now. So one of the things I'm almost worried about is even with the nerfs, they're not the heaviest nerfs in the world here. So what I'm wondering is, even with the nerfs, did they put the spotlight on Qiyana so much that people are going to stick with playing Qiyana because of how strong she is, and they're going to actually have to tune her back from where she was before they buffed her? All those Qiyana players who were excited to get the buff or whatever are actually going to be disappointed, because now that people are flocking to the champion and showing that it's OP, they're actually going to have to nerf the champion further or something like that to bring it back into line. As they said, it might be one of the strongest champions in the game right now. I don't get it. That's just me. This change was really dumb. I think she was one of the strongest champions in the game before they buffed her, and then they buffed her. And it's like, okay, you've got a champion that's like, maybe not the strongest champion before they buffed her, but you've got a champion that in my mind was like one of the strongest mid laners in the game in solo queue, like one of the top couple of scary mid laners in the game. And they took that champion and they buffed it. It's like, don't do that. Don't do that. Sylas, passive damage to monsters decreased. Bonus damage to monsters 150% to 130%. Yeah, so I forget what they did with Sylas jungle last patch, but they did so many things with so many junglers. But Sylas jungle, maybe it was the AD Sylas jungle buffs or something like that they were doing last patch, and maybe that was irrelevant. But Sylas jungle was one of the major winners, I guess you could say, of the jungle changes last patch, or maybe if it wasn't the jungle changes last patch, he's just been doing well in the jungle. And so he's been quite performant, and I think walking back his clear a little bit is totally fine, and this should be okay. It's not a huge deal. 150% to 130%. Talia, Q and Q2 mana cost decreased, damage decreased. What? E mana cost decreased, damage decreased. That's crazy. Talia has been no stranger to higher level play, and we think the culprit is a combination of reliability and durability in her most common builds. We'd like her to be weighed down less by her high mana cost in order to make her less reliant on Tear of the Goddess. Additionally, we would also see her build more aggressively, so we're lowering her base damage in order to make AP a larger portion of her power budget. We're improving the jungle modifiers as a way to offset these adjustments to mid lane. A lot of complicated changes here. We'll read through the changes, but my thoughts on Talia are that she doesn't do any damage. She is being picked a lot in pro play, but I don't know if it's that good. She doesn't do any damage. It's obviously all in her utility then, which is fine. Some champions can be like that, So she's almost like a Twisted Fate mid or something like that. It feels like they've gotten away from the identity of the champion if the champion's being picked solely for utility and not for at least like a decent chunk of it just being another damage mage. So I'm a little bit surprised, because Talia is also supposed to be, in a sense, a DPSing mage because she's constantly throwing her Qs out and rotating to new spots to be able to Q and stuff like that. She's not... I guess I would say that when I picture Talia in my head, she should be more DPS and not... bursting people. And when you see the way that she's played, it's often, the W knockback, into kind of a burst combo, and they're just CCing and bursting somebody down rather than DPSing or poking with Q. So I feel like the identity of the champion is getting skewed a little bit. But maybe, there are changes they're talking about, like taking base damage away and then giving her AP damage or something like that. That could help with that, because it'll force people to build less tanky, more AP, and play more around that damage instead of the utility potentially. So, we'll see. I don't know that she's necessarily super strong though, so hitting her with a lot of nerfs just because she's being picked frequently in pro play might not be the best. Mana cost 65 to 85, 55 to 75. Okay, so her mana cost is going down there. They're hoping that this makes her less reliant on tier. Yeah, here's the thing, and maybe I'm wrong about this. I don't think that people are going tier. That you see a lot of people right now going a lot of wonky items in mid lane. There's a lot of people, especially in pro play, who are opting into a much healthier, tankier build with things like, I'm blanking on the name of it, but what is the name of it? So you've got obviously the tier item into Seraphs, and then you've got the one that gives you like the ability point scales over time. Now I gotta look it up. We'll find it. I can't believe I forgot the name of the item. Yeah, Roa. GG. Yeah, so there, a lot of people are opting into weird things like tier Roa, and they're not champions you would expect to be giga scaling champions who want to be super tanky or anything like that. But as I've kind of said before in previous videos, health is just really OP, and building defensively is kind of strong, especially in pro play where games are more controlled, and and you kind of burst people more in CC chains and things like that, rather than actually having to deal a bunch of damage and hope that you fish for value out of your damage and stuff like that, like you do more in solo queue. I don't think that these builds, the Roa, the tier prevalence in mid lane, is because the champions are mana dependent. I think it's because it makes you much tankier, and the tankiness is really valuable, or at least people perceive the tankiness to be really valuable. And so I don't think that reducing her mana cost help with that, because people aren't building tier on Talia, and I could be wrong. I'm not a mid lane expert. I just forgot what row is. But I don't think that people are going tier on Talia for mana issues. I think they're going it to get these items, to get Roa, to get Seraphs, to be very tanky with the shield from Seraphs and the HP of Roa. And lowering the mana cost on her Q allows her to spam Q with the Roa passive to actually heal, because she's using that mana more frequently, something like that. So I don't know that's going to stop people from building tier. I think it's maybe a bit of the wrong approach to the champion, but again, I could be totally lost on this one. Q2 mana cost going from 20 down to 10, so they're reducing the mana cost there as well. Base damage going from 56 to 130 to 55 to 125. So very small change to the base damage. I mean, you're talking about 1 point of damage here at rank 1, but obviously you're probably maxing Q out first on Talia, so then it's going to be 5. Is this per stone, though, or something like that? There's no way this is per stone, or Talia would be pumping out damage like insane. So this must be total, because you're not going to do 500 damage with 1 Q, hopefully, base, not even including AP ratios. So hopefully this is total. So 5 total just doesn't seem like a big base damage reduction that would cause people to shift into AP or anything like that. She's just going to do even less damage. Flat damage per rock to monsters is going up from 10 to 20 to kind of compensate in the jungle. Okay, totally fine. Unraveled Earth mana cost is going down from 90 to 110 to 90 at all ranks, and the detonation base damage is going from 25 to 105 to 25 to 85. So they're taking more base damage off of the E detonation, but who is getting hit by the E expiring and detonating? Monster damage modifier is going up to 190% to compensate so it doesn't affect jungle. And there were no AP ratio changes, like they said. It just slight nerfs to the base damage. I think that this does nothing to Talia except make her abilities cost a little bit less mana and do 5 less damage. I think this does nothing at all. Vel'Koz, E cooldown decrease, R damage increased. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, Vel'Koz. I haven't seen a lot of Vel'Koz recently. He's been struggling probably. 14 to 12, 12 to 10. Yeah, that's kind of nice. A little bit of a cooldown reduction there on his E, 2 seconds at all ranks. R 450 damage to 800 damage to 450 to 925. Unfortunately, that's not going to make a huge difference because, especially in support, you're sitting on this rank 1 ult for quite a long time throughout the game. There's no damage change there whatsoever. The other thing is you're not casting your E off of cooldown. You're using it in really niche situations where you're actually able to use it and hit somebody. So I think that this, especially for support, is not going to do very much. Even in mid lane, again, it's the same thing. You're not really casting the E off of cooldown. You don't cast it all that frequently in the first place. And then you're getting an extra, 75 damage here at rank 2 into your ult. So level 11 plus, that's just not a whole lot. I think it's nice that he's getting a slight buff, but I think that this does nothing to move the champion at all. Volibear passive AP ratio decreased. Attack speed AP ratio 4% up to 20% per 100 AP to 3% up to 17.5% per 100 AP. Let me read this because I don't know what's going on here. Volibear has clawed his way back to the top ranks of junglers, tapping down the AP ratio on his passive, which should make his first item power spike less electrifying. Okay, so the AP ratio is just going down by 1%, and at maximum stacks, it's going down by 2.5%. Yeah, that's very minor, right? You're probably at 100 AP, especially at the first item power spike, if that. And it's minus 2.5 damage, so that's really, really small. Yunara, base health 600 to 575. Yeah, Yunara, yeah. So Yunara released, and it was pretty obvious from the time that she released that she was, I don't know. Actually, it wasn't so obvious to most people. It was pretty obvious to me. When most champions release, they have a very, very bad win rate. And Yunara, within like a couple of days, was sitting at like a 46-47% win rate and climbing day by day. So it was pretty obvious to me, based on what I've seen in the past, that Yunara seemed to be the type of champion that had a high skill ceiling, started off pretty high in terms of win rate, and people were just getting better at her day by day. Since then, she's obviously become one of the strongest AD carries in the game. I think there's a very strong argument that she's just the best AD carry in the game by far. And so now they're finally doing something about it, which I think is appropriate. So 600 to 575 base health. So that's kind of significant, losing 25 base health there. And base AD is going down by 3 as well, from 56 to 53. And her E bonus movement speed going from 50 to 70 to 30 to 50%. That's a pretty significant 20% reduction in bonus movement speed across the board. That's kind of big. Movement speed duration is also going down from 1.5 to 2.5 seconds to 1 second, or to 1.5 seconds at all ranks. These are pretty significant changes. I honestly, what is her win rate at? Is she really that dominant? I would have expected like maybe 1 or 2 of these changes at the same time. We're not on the patch, are we? This is 15-18. Sitting at a 49.68% win rate. I don't think that this level of nerfs was appropriate. Let's just put it this way. Yunara may be the best AD carry in the game, but maybe AD carries suck right now. So the thing is that I would have expected like 1 or maybe 2 of these. Like, I think had they just hit her base health and her base AD, she would have been totally fine. Honestly, looking at her win rate, there's different ranks too, right? But surely they can't even play Yunara. Yeah, it actually gets worse. So let's look at like Master Plus or something like that. Let's see how Yunara is doing. OP with a 48.8% win rate. Yeah, I don't know with her win rate at all these different ranks. I'm not sure that maybe she even... no, I agree with the concept to nerf her, like I was just saying. She's clearly pretty dominant. I don't know why people are managing to lose so much on her. Maybe it's because she's picked so frequently that, there's a lot of people picking her who are still learning the champion and quite bad on it. Maybe this is continuing to go up. Maybe they're seeing that the core people who actually put in the time early on Yunara are doing way too well, doing way too dominant in the games. But I would have expected really half of these changes, right? Like either you nerf her E significantly like this, or you hit the base health and the base AD, but both at the same time, especially when she's actually still at kind of a low win rate. Maybe Riot's getting ahead of the curve here with this one, and as people continue to play her, this will drop her pick rate back down, and then her win rate will go up a little bit because a bunch of people who aren't good at the champion stop playing it because of the nerfs. Maybe, if these people continue to play the champion and really enjoy it and like it, then the win rate will continue to go up because they keep playing it and learning it and getting better at it, and then these nerfs will kind of counteract that. So maybe they're right on point with that, but I don't know. It seems like it might have actually gone too far with nerfing the champion. Riot has this vicious cycle with new champions of them being like really, really... Well, they used to have the opposite problem. New champions used to come out, their win rate used to be insanely high, insanely unbalanced. Right now, new champions come out and they have the opposite problem. It's hard to balance a new champion when you don't have a ton of accurate data on it. But like new champions come out, they suck really bad in terms of win rate because people are learning the champion. So they suck really bad for a while. But if they were to come out at a 50% win rate, even though people don't know how to play it, then that would be a problem because then their win rate would climb. There's really no sweet spot that you can get to with balancing a new champion, because when a new champion releases, if you say ideally when a new champion releases, it's winning about 50% of its games. Well, that'd be nice for the first couple of days when the patch drops and the champion releases, because you don't want to feel like, Yunara drops, it's on the enemy team, we lost. Or Yunara dropped and nobody knows how to play it and somebody on my team's picking it, so we lost because this guy's griefing the solo queue game on a champion he's never played before. You don't want to feel either of those things, but one has to be true. Because if the champion starts at a 50% win rate and your reaction to it being picked is like, oh, it's whatever, a new champion's been picked, then what happens is it starts at a 50% win rate, and then once people learn it, get 10, 20, 30, 100 games on the champion, all of a sudden the win rate goes from 50% to 55%. Now the champion is broken. So there's no winning with releasing a new champion like that. It has to come out either low win rate, like they do now, and then they monitor how people are doing with the champion as they're learning it, and if they're doing really well and the win rate goes very positive, then they can nerf it and adjust it. If it's not quite making it to 50% or so, then they can give it a little boost and a little buff. And then the alternative is they could release the champions with a 50% win rate, but then nerf the champion every patch for a couple of patches afterwards as people start to get better at the champion. But you can risk, especially with 2 weeks in between patches, a champion really running away after 2 weeks of learning the champion, because people are pretty good at getting better at these things quickly now, especially the higher rank you go. Zac R now ghosts, grants ghosting during his ultimate. Okay, cool. He rarely gets stuck on units during his ultimate. The original Zac allowed him to pass through units to prevent this, so we're bringing back that functionality. Not a huge change, but it feels nice for Zac players. Bami's Cinder. Wow, this is crazy. That is nuts. Okay, so Bami's Cinder. We're revisiting Bami's Cinder this patch to help keep it in line with Faded Ashes. So Faded Ashes is the little 800 gold AP component of... it builds into like Blackfire Torch and Leandries, and it's been helping AP junglers clear really, really quickly. And as a result, other junglers have been a little bit less dominant, especially maybe tank junglers that can't clear as fast. So I don't know how to feel about this, because my opinion is more that Faded Ashes is broken than Bami's Cinder is underpowered. I've always thought that I've really liked Bami's Cinder when playing jungle. So seeing Bami's Cinder's percent amp on monsters get doubled seems like an insane buff to me for clear speed for tank junglers. So, I mean, hey, I enjoy tank junglers, although I'm not a jungler. I'm not playing that right now. But, I mean, that feels kind of nice. That is kind of nice. But I don't know that I would have gone in this direction of buffing Bami's instead of nerfing Faded Ashes. I guess the other thing there is maybe they feel like, depending on how Faded Ashes works and its modification against jungle monsters and stuff like that, if there is one, maybe they feel like they can't really nerf it without nerfing the item for AP laners or something like that. They have a bit of a design issue there with Faded Ashes, then I would say. And then, okay, Sunfire Cape has clearly been the worst option for tank junglers. Yeah, basically for everybody. I think this item kind of sucks, but the percent amp on minions and monsters is going from 50 to 60%. Not that it's a huge deal, but I kind of wonder why Bommies is going from 50 to 100%, and this is going from 50 to 60%. It's like it actually gets a little bit... I mean, it gets stronger because the stats that the item gives are bigger, but like, I don't know. I mean, maybe they tested it and it would have been just way too broken, but it's a little bit weird that Sunfire Cape gets less value. There's a lot of people, and I would be a big proponent of this, who say that Balmy Cinder is the type of item actually similar to Faded Ashes, where although you usually want to build into those items because they're so strong, the Faded Ashes items, but Balmy Cinder is definitely the type of item, especially on a low-cost tank jungler, like a low-income tank jungler, that you can just buy this item and sit on it. You don't have to complete Sunfire Cape. You don't have to complete Hollow Radiance. Neither of them are all that good. So you can just get Balmy Cinder, and then work on other items, and this item's going to be providing a lot of value, especially now that its percent amp on monsters is doubled, and Sunfire Cape is not. But obviously you would clear faster with Sunfire Cape because of the item giving you more burn and stats in the first place. And then finally we have Merc Skim, Mercurial Scimitar. Attack damage going up by 10, magic resistance going down by 5, and active movement speed duration going from 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds. When you find yourself forced to rush QSS to survive enemy Malzahar, Warwick, or just a team with heavy CC, it's still usually in your best interest to complete this item last. Even then, you may still feel like you're giving up more power than you can afford to due to the meager stats that the item gives on completion. We're looking to make sure the item still feels appropriately tuned while keeping a focus on the active as its main strength. Yeah, I kind of agree with the direction they're moving in on this one. I think that it would be really nice if an item like, let's say, Merc Skim, like they said, instead of being, you get QSS, so now this is a mandatory 6th item, it would be nice if it was competitive enough that you can think about, well, maybe if I complete Merc Skim as a... I don't think that this change does it, by the way, but maybe if I complete Merc Skim as a 5th item or 4th item, it's going to do this for me, versus this other item is going to do this different thing for me. So maybe, for example, it's, Merc Skim is going to give me this movement speed boost for a longer period of time. Whereas if I went Bloodthirster or something like that, it's going to give me Lifesteal. Or if I go, another defensive item, it's going to do a different thing. I think that there's obviously a lot of room in League in general, but especially with an item like this, to bring items on par with each other so that they are actually viable to build at certain points, rather than, either I just don't build this at all or I build it last every time. Like, if the build paths are a bit too obvious, they need to make items roughly the same value as each other so that there's actually choice between, like, these are roughly mathematically the same value, so it's just kind of up to me which one I feel like doing, which one fits my play style better. Which one do I think situationally in this game is better? Those kinds of things are really healthy for the game, add a lot of creativity and variance and fun to the game, because you're getting to go different items and stuff like that. And I feel like that's really lacking in League right now, because a lot of the items are just clearly better than other ones. And if the items were more in line with each other, that would be really nice. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the patch. They got ARAM and Doombots, and then, arena changes. This is a champion changes for arena. Bug fixes we don't go through. And they're releasing the SKT World Skins this patch, including this Prestige T1 Silas skin. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Pretty good. Oh, these are chromas. Then we got 1, 2. Why is there an extra comma in here? It's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the Prestige Stylus one. Totally fine. Okay, thank you guys for watching. Good luck in solo queue, and have a wonderful day.